I'm Shannon Martin. Tonight, terrifying details out of Hamilton when a couple in their 20s is shot dead, police say, by their landlord.
I heard this scream, like a gut-curling scream, and after that, one single fire.
We heard people out here yelling and screaming that a woman with a purple shirt was lying on the ground, lifeless.
What came next? An hours-long standoff, ending with the gunman killed in an exchange of gunfire with police. Plus,
running is fast, and it is actually silent.
for the second time in less than a week, a preschooler drowns in a backyard pool when a birthday party in Oakville ends in tragedy. And 4 weeks to go before Toronto casts ballots for a new mayor, we take a look at the big issues and what you need to know before the big vote.
This is CBC Late Night News.
Thanks for joining us. We have troubling new details to tell you tonight in what police are calling a landlord and tenant dispute that turned deadly. Witnesses saw a couple in their 20s shot and killed as they tried to run for their lives. Mike Crawley spent the day outside the home where it happened. Mike.
Well, Shannon, police, their forensics investigators, they've been on the scene all day. It's only just now that they've let us get this close to the house. You can see some of the damage that gives you a sense of the confrontation. I've been speaking to neighbors over the course of the day, and they're telling me they're absolutely shocked by what happened. A dramatic standoff as police surround a house in East Hamilton. A gunman barricaded inside, while outside lay the bodies of his two victims.
They were observed by witnesses fleeing the house, and they were killed outside of the residence. They were running away.
I heard this scream, like a gut-curling scream, and after that, one single fire.
We heard people out here yelling and screaming that a woman with a purple shirt was lying on the ground, lifeless.
The Hamilton Police Tactical Unit surrounded the scene.
Police got out with weapons. One was crouched down here and went on our lawn, and it was a little frightening because we didn't know what was going on at all.
As dusk approached, police negotiators were in contact with the shooter, the couple's 57-year-old landlord.
I can tell you that our negotiators certainly did the best they could to try to negotiate a peaceful resolution here.
But the standoff would not end peacefully.
There was an exchange of gunfire between the man and a police officer. The man was struck and he was pronounced deceased at the scene.
Police have not named the shooter. They say multiple legal weapons were registered at his address, including handguns and rifles.
Well, I know his name's Terry Barassa. He was very quiet man.
As for the victims, police say they're a 28-year-old man who was an electrician and a 27-year-old woman who was an educational assistant for a Catholic school board.
These are not people that this should happen to. They're not involved in any level of criminality or lifestyle that may lead to an incident like this. They're truly innocent victims, hardworking people, young people. They were engaged to be married, and this is a very tragic incident.
The death of the shooter means Ontario's Special Investigations Unit will probe the circumstances of how that transpired. Meanwhile, the Hamilton police will try to find out exactly how a landlord-tenant dispute could possibly turn so deadly. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Hamilton.
As you saw, neighbors likely still processing the shock of what they witnessed. The councillor for the area told CBC News it's a small community and residents will get support.
Let's continue to have open dialogue about it as a community. Let's come together. Let's support each other. Help those who need, a shoulder to cry on. We have to keep the dialogue going. This is a major event, and being able to support each other as a community, it's what we're good at. The Ward 10 community, the Stony Creek, Winona, Fruitland areas, we're pretty close-knit, so you'll see us all coming together, I'm sure, to offer supports.
For the second time this week, a preschooler in our province has drowned in a backyard pool. This time it happened in Oakville. There was a birthday party underway. It was around 7 p.m. when a 3-year-old boy was pulled from the pool. Police say paramedics did CPR before taking him to hospital, but he died. There isn't much else known about the boy just yet. He was visiting the home. He did not live there. Halton's homicide unit and the coroner's office are investigating. No charges have been laid at this time. As we said, this is the second drowning this week involving kids. On Tuesday, a 3-year-old girl lost her life after drowning in a backyard pool in Ajax. Durham police at the time talked about the impact that this has on everyone, the family, friends, the entire community. For more on this story, we've reached Stephanie Bacalar. She's with the Life Saving Society of Ontario. Thanks so much for being here with us, Stephanie.
Hi, thanks for having me, Shannon.
Stephanie, you know, when you hear 2 children under the age of 5 in the last week, I know you're a mom, I'm a mom. When you hear this news, what goes through your mind?
It's absolutely devastating. And as a mother, you can only help but picture this with your own children. And it's very concerning and upsetting. Obviously, our thoughts are with the families right now of these 2 terrible losses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know so much of your work is around safety precautions. So what sort of protection are we talking that should be in place when it comes to backyard pools?
So we at the Life Saving Society want to empower families to safely enjoy the water. And a lot of that does come with these key safety measures that can be put in place. So backyard pools are an especially common setting for drownings. For children under 5, they actually account for 1/3 of water-related deaths. So what we want parents to do is actually look for layers of protection. So start with 4-sided fencing. A lot of pools actually have 3-sided fencing where the house is considered the 4th side. We want you to actually create another barrier between your home and your pool so that your pool is entirely enclosed by fencing. And then any gates to access your pool should be self-latching so that when you leave the area, they're closing shut behind you. We also want to make sure that we have door alarms and gate alarms. And a lot of people might not think about this, but if your child actually does leave the home and an alarm sounds, you're going to be notified of that no matter where you are in the home, and you can respond very quickly.
Right.
So door alarm and gate alarms are great. Another great tip we have for families, and it's a really, like I said, a really empowering thing that they can do. If you go on our website at lifesavingsociety.com, you can actually get a checklist that you can go through as a family and check to make sure that your backyard pool is set up for safety.
You know, it's not even summer yet, but we're already having such beautiful weather. So a lot of people are going to be heading to the water, whether it's backyard pools or down to the lake. You know, as we head into the summer, what are some other things that you really want people to keep in mind the next little while?
Yeah, certainly I've been at the lake with my 2 daughters, and I've also been at the local pool outside with my 2 daughters multiple times already this year. It is fantastic. It's a great way to spend time as a family. Be really vigilant. Make sure you know where your kids are, you're watching your kids. Talk to your kids. Explain water safety to them. They're never too young to learn about water safety and to know to stay back from the water, to always have a grown-up with them. Again, it's those layers of protection. So awareness for them, make sure that they're in a life jacket, especially if you're out on a boat or if you're at a cottage or a waterfront setting where they may tumble into the water, put a life jacket on them. Always, always, always actively supervising kids near the water. For us, my husband and I, if we're at a pool party, I'll say, I'm gonna watch the kids and I'll be in the water swimming, I'm engaging, I'm watching the kids. If I have to step away, I'm gonna look to someone else and say, I'm gonna step away from my active role of watching the kids. Can you please take over? Make sure that someone knows that they are supervising.
Yeah, you know, those are just such critical tips and things that we can all keep in mind, because when you hear stories like this, you know that things happen quickly in just a matter of minutes.
Absolutely. Drowning is fast and it is actually silent. A lot of people think that it may be a loud, splashing ordeal, but what often happens is someone slips beneath the surface, and when they're unable to swim, they're not able to regain the surface and get that breath. So they're actually going to be silently under the water.
We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us tonight and just getting that awareness out there. A lot of people will be devastated by these stories this week. Thank you, Stephanie. She's with the Life Saving Society of Ontario. Turning to some more developing news next, a motorcyclist is dead after a crash in Scarborough. It happened around 1:30 this afternoon. Police say a vehicle and motorcycle somehow collided, officers blocking off the intersection to investigate. There are few other details available at this time. And in Etobicoke tonight, a cyclist is dead after a crash with a vehicle. It happened just before 7:30. A man believed to be in his 30s was pronounced dead. The driver remained on scene. Police closed roads in the area for the investigation. We'll bring you more details on this one as we learn them. The cost of living, mental health, homelessness, those are just some of the big issues on the table this weekend at the Big City Mayors Convention underway in Toronto. As Meg Roberts shows us, they're calling for more support from the federal government.
Well, let us choose.
More than 1,500 municipal leaders from across the country meeting to discuss the most local issues. But those local issues, they say, will only be fixed with federal dollars.
One of the most important things that we as a caucus did is overwhelmingly support a resolution to start a conversation with the federal government about a new financial arrangement for municipalities.
Municipal leaders say they need predictable revenue, especially with the population expanding. Leaders say it's not just about funding much needed housing, but also ensuring resident services like transportation, wastewater centers, and parks.
The federal government has all the money, the provincial government has all the power, and the municipal government has all the problems. And we can't continue to build a great nation without a new relationship with the federal government.
The Federation of Canadian Municipalities says towns and cities are responsible for 60% of the infrastructure in the country, but get 9 cents on every tax dollar. And some say the situation is dire.
If there's one word that would describe the overarching situation for municipalities, it's crisis. Homelessness crisis, mental health crisis, opioid crisis, fiscal crises. The time is now to start taking action on them.
We need to be partners in it if we want to truly serve people in the best possible way in these challenging times.
Prime Minister Trudeau speaking earlier this weekend, pledging his support. Municipal leaders are hopeful he heard them loud and clear.
This is another chance to have a renewal of that partnership and a modernization of the arrangement between municipalities and governments.
The Federation of Canadian Municipalities says it's in desperate need for more funding, but at this time is not recommending where the federal government find that money from. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Toronto.
Turning to the East Coast and more, developing news this hour, evacuations are underway in communities outside of Halifax as wildfire danger has escalated quickly, as Kate McKinnon shows us. At least 10 homes are destroyed. Many more are under threat.
Plumes of smoke caused by a fire that ignited only this afternoon. It's out of control, and so far, it's been devastating.
This fire has damaged several homes and properties. The count of the properties and the extent to which they're damaged is not yet known.
Tens of thousands of people already forced to evacuate, the number growing by the hour. Evacuation centers already set up.
We just heard on the radio that there was a fire, and then as we got closer to home, we could see the smoke, and it's incredible. And it's across the road. We're sort of the subdivision across the road.
This fire started about a half hour west of Halifax in Upper Tantallon. It's been moving east. Entire subdivisions are evacuated, and others nearby, like Taylor Martin, anticipate being told they'll need to leave.
Honestly, my partner and I were just sitting on the couch earlier today and were talking about the weather, and then had noted that there was no clouds in the sky, and then just saw this very large what we at first thought was a cloud, but ended up being just a huge cloud of smoke.
Officials say help is coming in the form of water tankers from Newfoundland and New Brunswick. But there are concerns about the number of fires in the Maritimes so far this season.
Yeah, so this season so far, we've had 176 wildfires. Compared to last season, we only had 70 wildfires.
With no rain in the forecast and multiple out-of-control fires in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, officials warn these conditions are primed for more fires. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Sophia joins us now, and I know this is something you and your team are tracking closely.
An unprecedented fire situation, very overly active in parts of the east. Structures lost, as you heard there, an uncontained fire. And we're actually going to show you some satellite imagery of that big fire in the Halifax suburbs there. This is just over the span of a few hours, and you can see that plume of smoke really pick up and travel east as far as Dartmouth for any of your friends or family there. A mix of rising temperatures, incredibly dry conditions, and that wind really whipping up this fire, though. From the weather department, the situation will hopefully get better in the next 24 hours or so. A cold front will be coming through and dipping those temperatures down. So hopefully crews out in Halifax can get the upper hand and get around these big fires. We're talking temperatures here at home as well. On the other side of the coin, we are up for a stretch of sunny, calm, clear, and warm conditions. We talked a little bit about the atmospheric pattern at play, a Rex block, really high pressure being blocked in place. For us, being the benefactors of a really nice but dry stretch of weather. When it's all said and done, folks, we might have a stretch of about 16 days without rain, so it might be too much of a good thing. Look at the temperatures, though. Depending on where that big old high pressure is placed, you could be the benefactor of 30-degree warmth, like in Moosonee on Tuesday, for example. Or if you're on the other side of the coin, you've got a lake breeze and you're below seasonal. In places like Marathon, down further to the south, you've got that roller coaster at play as well. On Wednesday, 30 degrees in Ottawa. You've had it a couple times so far this year, but that lake breeze at play in Cobourg, just 19. We'll talk about some of the cool nights and some of the lack of rain, but really first world problems. It's a great stretch of weather for those of you in parts of the GTA with highs in the high 20s. I'll give you the full 7-day when we come back, Shannon.
Okay, thanks, Sophia. See you shortly.
You're welcome.
Here's a live look at Toronto this hour. 4 weeks from now, Toronto casts ballots for a new mayor. Coming up, our Toronto City Hall reporter Sean Jeffords joins us with a look at the race and what to expect as we get closer to the big day. Just 4 weeks to go now before Toronto casts ballots for a new mayor, and this weekend was a busy one for candidates. Some hitting the campaign trail, talking the big issues with voters, candidates addressing housing, from how to improve life in Tower communities to leasing city lands to build more housing. Well, this past week, we saw 4 debates in only 2 days. Earlier, I spoke to City Hall reporter Sean Jeffords about the race so far and what he's watching for this week.
You know, the focal point was these debates. You had candidates literally running the gauntlet, 48 hours, 4 debates. The first chance, a really good chance really, for everyone to see, voters to see these 6 top polling candidates square off. And, you know, the most noteworthy thing to me was that Mark Saunders seemed to be the focus of a lot of attacks here, maybe most of the attacks. And, you know, Olivia Chow's campaign is probably looking at this strategically, saying, hey, I'm the front runner, maybe this is an advantage for me. Saunders was taken to task for his record as the police chief. He was criticized as a proxy for Premier Doug Ford, and that criticism, you know, there might be some legitimacy to it, because frankly, the Premier has sort of tiptoed up to endorsing Saunders in this race. Now, Saunders would say, hey, look, I can get along well with the Premier. I can be the person to go and negotiate a new fiscal deal for the city, which is required. So he's trying to really say, this positions me quite well.
Sean, the city's giant fiscal gap came up and sparked some salty exchanges, should we say, between the candidates.
Yeah, Shannon, you know, I think that is kind of the elephant in the room here. Regardless of who wins this race, they are going to have to come in and deal with that $1 to $1.5 billion budget gap, depending on how you do the math. That's huge. The city has a $16 billion operating budget, so you can imagine it's got a profound impact. It's that COVID hangover that John Tory used to talk about. The services that the city had to provide during the pandemic and the continued impact of those. So that's really going to hamstring candidates. And, you know, they want to talk about how they're going to spend, how they're going to build the city. But the reality is, whoever wins the race here to take the top job at City Hall, they're going to have to come in with a plan. And I'm not sure that we saw the level of detail about how candidates will solve that. And I suspect that over the next 4 weeks, that's going to come up again and again and again.
So, Sean, tell us, what are you going to be watching for this week?
Well, we've got a couple more debates, so certainly we're going to see these top 6 candidates square off again. And I also think what's really noteworthy is Thursday, June the 1st, campaign signs go up. You're going to start to see advertising the air war effectively starts, the direct outreach from these campaigns to voters to try to break through the noise of this very crowded field and this very crowded race. So that's what I'm going to be watching for this week and how it impacts the campaign.
Hundreds coming together today in support of MS Canada.
Hey, we're ready. We're here to raise money for a good cause and just have a good time. I'm someone that lives with MS and we're living large.
You're looking at the annual MS Walk, which aims to raise awareness and money for MS research. More than 900,000 Canadians are impacted. This year's event is taking place across 45 Canadian communities, all part of MS Awareness Month. To Ottawa, where a 96-year-old has set a world record for running.
Right, it's over. Now I can go back to normal life.
That's Réjean Fairhead, who set an age group record at the Ottawa Runners Weekend. She finished the 5K in 51 minutes and 9 seconds. Now that breaks a previous record by more than 3 minutes in the women's 95 to 99-year-old age category. How amazing is that? Hats off, Réjean. Wow.
We have no excuses now. Like, that is
right.
amazing. What an accolade. Like, what a category to have those accolades in.
I know,
amazing.
The 95 to 99-year-old category.
That's awesome.
We should all be so lucky.
Goals, hashtag goals. Yeah. It's beautiful for a run right now in Ottawa, 23 degrees. You're holding on to some of that heat depending on where you are situated with this big old high pressure above us. But no matter where you are tomorrow, especially in the southern Great Lakes Basin, it is going to be just downright glorious. How often do I get to say that? Look at that brilliant sunshine, barely a cloud in the sky. And folks, if you like that, it's not going anywhere for the long range forecast. You will notice, though, a little chill in the air into the overnights. Think of a pot on the stove without the lid on, right? There's no cloud cover to keep in any of that heat. It will be a little bit cool with that north wind throughout the overnight periods. You will also notice a trend for this upcoming week, along with the beautiful forecast. High UV, it will be a thing that you will get used to really over the next coming days. And as we get into the next few days, you'll also notice a difference with lake breeze. So yes, it's going to be beautiful, but some areas, depending on where you are over the coming week, will be about 10 degrees cooler depending on that lake breeze. Look at that, Goderich below seasonal, while you have 30, about a 10-degree difference between 20 and 30 for those of you Goderich to London, for example. You'll see those differences over the coming week. It's because of this big atmospheric pattern that is keeping us stable but very dry for the coming week. Look at that brilliant 7-day forecast. Get out and enjoy the golf course, but here's my advice to make sure you water the garden. We could have it more than a 2-week stretch without any really substantial rain, so that fire danger rating is going to grow, but so will a lot of the smiling kids' faces as you got the sprinkler out on the yard, Shannon.
Yes, a pot on the stove without a lid. I learned something new every night.
Look at that. Well, I'm glad I could do that.
Thanks so much, Sophia. Have a great week.
You too. See you next week, everyone.
That is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a great week ahead, and we'll see you again here soon.